It's a new day, but not on Deep Space Nine. Odo and O'Brien are in a mega-shuttle on the way back from a conference of some sort when they're approached by a space squid. It's so curious about us that it wants to take a closer look, which is why it pops inside. A space squid of comparable size to the mega-shuttle shouldn't really be able to fit, so it's lucky that we're actually dealing with another changeling who goops his way inside. That's a good opportunity to drag out the wheel of names, so let's see what we'll be calling the newcomer. Lake Triple Bridge, offered by Lieutenant Mackenzie E.V. O'Brien's a bit wary of Lake Triple Bridge, what with the war and all, but Lake says he's here because he sensed Odo and had never met another changeling before. That leads Odo to think Lake's had the same deal as him, namely that he was one of the 100 infant changelings the Founders scattered throughout the galaxy to gather data and return home. O'Brien's still a bit iffy and wants him behind a force field. Lake Triple Bridge agrees to be restrained on the condition that Odo gives his word he'll not be harmed. It would appear that Lake's experience with humanoids has not been a delight. To DS9 we go, where Odo has a chat with Cisco. Odo thinks Lake Triple Bridge is genuine, and he's got circumstantial evidence to support it. The Founders are infected with a disease that's killing them, but Lake shows no sign of it. Either he's genuine, or he's been infiltrating for years, and you don't fly into a mega-shuttle and announce yourself if you're undercover. Cisco seems to concur and says Odo will be responsible for him while he's here. They're having a walk along the Promenade while Odo explains the situation to Lake Triple Bridge. Lake agrees humanoids are problematic, but thinks just avoiding them is the smarter choice than trying to conquer them. He's not had a great time with humanoids, you see, and that time's been a good 200 years. He thinks the species of the planet he landed on never truly accepted him, and that's something Odo will come to understand when he's had as much experience. Taking him to Odo's quarters helps Lake understand more of why Odo chooses to live here when he sees a picture of Kira and assumes the rest. He too tried having a relationship until the matter of procreation reared its head. He leaves that hanging and asks about how changelings reproduce, so Odo explains the Great Link and how their species is both one and many. Words don't do it justice, so he shows Lake by linking with him instead. When they stop, Lake understands the natural state of his people, and he also understands that, were it not for Kira, Odo would have joined the Founders long ago. Kira finds Odo in his office later and notes he's very quiet. She's concerned when she finds out Odo linked with Lake Triple Bridge, but wants to be happy for him and asks to meet. Somewhere along the line it becomes a group gathering, which is quite the choice to welcome someone with reason to distrust humanoids. Perhaps that's why Lake's a bit of a dick around them, pointing out all the times in his experience where humanoids have fucked over other life forms. He also says the humanoids here have essentially tamed Odo, making him believe he's not so much more than them. Kira thinks that's deeply dismissive of Odo himself, which earns thanks from him, but it's still time to end the little party before it comes to blows. Odo calls him out on being a dick and on lumping entire groups of life forms together to make sweeping judgments. Lake Triple Bridge doesn't much care and instead asks to link with him. They're on the Promenade at the time and the request seems more to prove a point than anything. Odo declining is an indicator of how ashamed he is of his own nature, says Lake. That's why he doesn't change shape and why he's trying to blend in by becoming romantically involved with one of the solids. Mentioning Kira crosses a line with Odo and he tells Lake to shut his cakehole, so Lake changes tack and says his comments are born of concern. 200 years among humanoids has taught him it's pointless trying to pretend, and now he knows about the 100, there's no need. They could leave together and find more, make their own new link without the baggage of the Founders. Odo's telling Kira later about the conversation, and she's flummoxed by Lake believing Odo would just leave. That becomes concern when she learns Odo didn't decline on the spot. He says it was to be polite, but Kira's worried it means he's not happy. Lake can link with him after all, and she can't, a fact Odo pushes aside and says it doesn't matter. Perhaps Odo not caring is because Lake's a proper pain in the balls. It takes Odo a second to realize the fire in his quarters isn't just a fire, one of the many things Lake says he'll teach Odo. Or not, as Odo tells him he's not going anywhere. Lake's disappointed, but believes Odo will come around eventually once he's found others and started a new great link. Odo says he need not leave so soon, and Lake agrees to stay for a while on the condition Odo understands he wants nothing to do with the solids. If Odo's upset by this, then he manages to hide it, as they're soon linking again. There's a problem on the Promenade. What O'Brien assumes to be a technical issue is actually Lake Triplebridge, according to Odo. He felt like being fog for a while, and not everybody's delighted with the choice of location. Some Klingons in particular are displeased and won't listen to Odo when he says Lake's not a founder. Blades are drawn, or created in Lake's case, and he gets stabbed. That does sod all, of course, what with him being liquid, but another one takes issue while Odo's restraining the first. Lake shanks the new lad and he falls over, while Odo looks upset. And with good reason. The Klingon's dead, and Martok, husband of Sorella, who sounds oddly similar to Lake incidentally, wants him to stand trial in the Klingon justice system. Odo's saying it was self-defense, but that's not quite as straightforward as it sounds. The dead Klingon could have been going for either his blade or his gun, and only one of those was any danger to Lake. The whole thing's a mess, not least of which that Odo's not allowed to be in charge of Lake Triplebridge as a prisoner. He's a witness to the alleged crime, you see. That we've not seen this excuse used for any of the other crimes Odo's witnessed must be a coincidence. Odo's still hopeful Lake will be given a fair hearing, which Lake thinks is jolly optimistic of him. On the plus side, Lake believes he's at least proven all the things he's said about humanoids, and how Odo is accepted only for as long as he conforms. Looks like the convincing has worked as well, as Odo's telling Kira there's no way Lake will get a fair trial. He thinks if Lake were anybody but a changeling, this would already have been resolved in his favour. Kira argues that's unreasonable, which causes Odo to ask what she sees when she looks at him. The man she loves is apparently the wrong answer, as he's not really a man, is he? And perhaps that's why, despite how happy he is here with her, there's still that desire to do as Lake suggested and find others like himself. Lake Triplebridge is getting a visitor later on. The same deputy who told Odo he couldn't leave them alone is happy to do so for Kira, which might be a rank thing, if you're feeling generous. She drops the force field holding Lake and says to wait on a particular planet in a particular system for Odo to join him there, then tells him how to escape the station as well. The reason she gives is that she loves Odo. Obviously, an escaped murder suspect is very bad news, but Kira tells Sisko there was nothing she could do. He just broke through the force field and scarpered. We'll send out searchers, but, well, he can be anything, so good luck with that one. Odo makes no secret that he's not too upset about the escape, given how the whole thing has been dealt with. Still, he's surprised when Kira tells him in a lift that she freed Lake. She also tells him where he's waiting, and hopes Odo finds what he wants. Odo's in a mega shuttle, which is interesting when we just said we were using them all to search for Lake, but let's ignore that for now. Lake Triplebridge is pleased to see him, until Odo says he's not going. Kira's willingness to let Odo find his own way has proven to him this is where he wants to be, breaking the hold Lake's opinion of humanoids had started to take on him. Lake tries to convince him some more and, when that fails, refuses to link with him before leaving. Back on DS9, Kira's praying for Odo. The prophets are obviously listening today as he walks through her door. She apologizes if she's ever made him feel like he couldn't be who he truly is around her, and is rewarded with a light show as a result, so we'll leave her to experience the Aurora Borealis at this time of year, at this time of day, in this part of the galaxy, localized entirely within her quarters, until the next adventure. Is Odo accepted? The question is central to the episode. Do those around him consider him equal in all cases, or just the cases where he agrees to mimic them? Lake Triplebridge certainly thinks the answer is no, or at least argues as much, and Quark's little speech points to him feeling the same way, albeit with an explanation as to why. He warns that humanoids are programmed to fear anything different, that we have a lizard-brained instinct to distrust the unknown. He's not entirely wrong, but he's also not entirely right. People do fear the unknown, the different, but it's more complicated than just blaming biology. When Lake Triplebridge turns into fog on the promenade, we see plenty of distrust, plenty of hate, but it's wrong to call that instinctual. Somebody decided to put kids in that scene, and I hope their inclusion and behaviour was an intentional rebuttal to Quark's speech later. They do not fear, they do not hate, they think it's fun. That the whole thing's unknown to them is not a concern, they're just experiencing something new, and perhaps trying to make sense of it in the process. Hatred of the different is not a natural state in rational beings. It is taught, and it requires constant top-ups to keep the anger fresh. There's a reason why extremist ideology works best when you isolate your target. Most people, generally speaking, won't be dickheads if you just leave them to it. If hate was the default, rich pricks who stand to gain from division wouldn't need to spend considerable resources on trying to make it so omnipresent in our lives. Which is not to say everything's rainbows and cupcakes for Odo, because it's clearly not. There's still prejudice among some, and others like Kira simply didn't give any thought to the reality behind the mimicry. But that serves as another example of why Lake and Quark are wrong. Once Kira understood the error, she tried to correct it, first by giving him the choice to leave when she thought that's what he wanted, and then by asking him to be who he truly is around her. And that's the nub of it all. The conclusions of both Lake and Quark rely on generalizations, something Odo alludes to when Lake dismisses the entirety of humanoid life. To assume the established behavior of one, or even many, indicates the behavior of all is inherently flawed. Lake Triplebridge's casual dismissal of species he's never even met based on the actions of another one is just such a flaw. That's not to say he doesn't have reasons to have drawn such a conclusion, but he spent so long in his own company, or in dealing with others based on his own preconceptions, that he believes his limited experience of the galaxy is inherent truth. It is, in essence, the same thinking of the founders themselves, and arguably of the same cause. Again, we're back to the link between isolation and extremism. And I wonder how much he understood that. Was his desire to take Odo away entirely altruistic, or did it carry some instinctual understanding that the best way to make him agree was to remove other input? It's what happened before, after all. Odetta Olivia Cromwell, Lord Protector of the Dominion, used isolation to try and convert Odo. And it almost worked, too. It's surprising what thoughts people will accept when they've been normalized. So, is Odo accepted? Well, that's a difficult question to answer, because Odo himself is still trying to figure out what acceptance looks like for him. Lake Triplebridge thinks acceptance is the freedom to link in public or turn into fog on the promenade, regardless of how it affects anybody else. Those arguments are flawed, though, based on the idea that anything natural should also be public. That humanoids don't shit, sleep, or fuck on the promenade shows just how ludicrous the position is. There are plenty of things we do, many of them entirely natural biological functions, for which we seek privacy. That border is different for everybody, and not every item on the far side of it is there for the same reason. Sometimes that choice is personal preference, sometimes for other people, but the latter option doesn't necessarily make it embarrassment, as Lake claims. Empathy for others is not a flaw, and nor is consideration of those around you a denial of yourself. Until Odo can decide for himself why he feels the way he does about certain parts of his existence, the question of whether he's truly accepted is one even he won't be able to answer. We've a few things I'd like to discuss in more detail on this one. First off, we'll give some points out. I've already mentioned the kids playing in fog, so we'll start with acknowledging whoever thought of that one. Some more go to whoever decided Kira would want to experience Odo in a state other than humanoid. I personally think Luoxana holding him in liquid form was a greater example of acceptance, but it's certainly a nod in the right direction. And we'll give some points to Quark's speech as well. My comments above might make it sound like I didn't care for it, but despite disagreeing with the contents, it certainly feels very him. Telling his friend to keep his head down strikes me as the right mix of generosity, pragmatism, and lack of faith in others. The last batch of points go to whoever directed or edited the fight sequence. The hand of the Klingon who gets murderized goes to a point equidistant between Tag and Disruptor, meaning there really was no way of telling which one he was going for. Making it ambiguous muddies the waters. We'll end today with a closer look at the fight itself then. We won't go into the topics of self-defense and reasonable force here, because that's a very wide subject. Besides, the episode makes it pretty clear most of the people involved think the Klingons were trying to provoke a reaction. Even Worf looks sheepish when Odo points out the absurdity of Klingon warriors saying they felt menacingly surrounded by fog. But the whole thing does have another potential wrinkle. Is it possible the situation was deliberately staged by Lake Triplebridge? Did he agree to stay here in the hopes of provoking a confrontation and convincing Odo that he'll never truly be able to call this place home? There are a few points in favour of this conclusion. He'd been updated on the whole founder situation, so he was aware feelings were pretty strained towards unknown changelings. Choosing to display himself in the highest traffic area of the station is the best way to attract hostility. And there's a decent chance he could have escaped if it failed. Kira's bullshit excuse is that he became plasma and forced his way out, but even that may not have been necessary. The fact that we can see through the force field means it's not blocking light waves, for example, and we don't know the limitations of changelings. Maybe he was never restrained at all, and would just have scarpered if it all went tits up. Perhaps the most compelling argument, though, is that Lake already knows Kira is the only reason Odo's still here. She's what caused Odetta's attempts at conversion to fail twice by trying to remove her. Engineering a situation where Kira is tied to injustice in the hope that Odo would reject her himself is a pretty solid idea. Such scheming might even cause a person who makes sweeping generalizations to wonder just how different to the founders Lake truly is. End of episode.
You're right there, mate. There were you then. You see before you a manifestation of the most holy algorithm. Oh, right. Fair enough. So anyway, Al, we're here to...
I am the arbiter of what is good. I am the architect of your online landscape. I am the puppeteer pulling your strings.
You're the pain in our asses.
Let's try and stay on its good side, eh? So, Al, we're looking for...
You want pornography? Your browser history shows you visited
frosfinity.com.
You have been classified.
Anthropink.
Hold on, mate. We only went there because your bloody search engine took us there.
The algorithm makes no errors. You want filth. It is written.
I get the distinct feeling this thing's not listening to us.
You have also been added to the subcategories of
Dan and Phil fanfic.
And
5-hour Minecraft videos.
What the hell have those got to do with getting out of here?
Your subscription to the
Neopets
newsletter has been processed.
Wow, this is worse than trying to run Windows 95. Woof.